Tonight's story isn't just about fear, it's about survival and the price of escaping the darkness. He thought he was running from war, but the jungle had other plans. Some say the Cambodian jungle hides the restless souls of the forgotten. And one boy, just 14, found out what happens when the jungle finds you. This is The Jungle Found Him. My name is Thea, and this isn't my story. It belongs to my father. But I tell it because he never could. Before I was born, before the peace that I grew up in, my father lived through a war that devoured everything he loved. He never spoke of it, not to my mother, not to anyone. But one night, when the rain wouldn't stop falling and the wind howled against the shutters, I found him sitting alone. His eyes were open, but he wasn't really there. He was somewhere far away, in the jungle where he almost died. My father's name was Max. He was 14 when the war reached his village in Cambodia. They said the Khmer Rouge were coming, soldiers who could erase a family with the knock of a rifle butt. Everyone whispered it, but no one ran. Not yet. His home stood at the edge of the forest, a small wooden house surrounded by banana trees and the songs of cicadas. He used to play there with his sister, chasing lizards through the brush, shouting until his voice vanished into the trees. The jungle was a friend then, wild, green, endless. But friends can change, and that same jungle would one day become his cage. The night it happened began like every other. The sky was swollen with clouds, and thunder rolled far in the distance. Max's mother packed rice into small cloth bags. His father kept watch by the window, his rifle hidden under the table. No one spoke. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like a death sentence. Then came the pounding. 3 knocks. Sharp, heavy, final. The kind of sound that doesn't ask permission to enter. Bang, bang, bang. Max's mother froze. His father whispered something, too low to hear, and motioned toward the back door. The banging grew louder. The voices outside barked orders. Soldiers. They were here. Max's father turned to him, his eyes wet and wild. "Take your sister," he said. "Run. Don't stop." The back door opened with a groan. Cool air rushed in, thick with rain and the smell of wet earth. Max grabbed his sister's hand. He wanted to look back. He wanted to say goodbye. But his father's voice cut through the thunder. "Run!" They ran, through mud, through vines, through roots that clawed at their feet. Behind them, the house filled with screams, shouts, gunfire, the crash of splintered wood. The jungle swallowed the noise, and then there was only silence. For hours, Max and his sister pushed deeper into the trees. Every branch felt alive. Every shadow looked like a hand. The rain fell harder, blinding them, soaking their clothes until they clung like second skin. His sister stumbled and cried, but Max pulled her forward, whispering, "Almost there, just a little further." When the sky cleared, he saw the moon, pale and distant, hanging like a ghost between the trees. That's when he realized they were lost. The border was nowhere in sight, only darkness, endless and breathing. He made a small fire beneath a tree, though he knew it was dangerous. The jungle never sleeps, and its silence is louder than any scream. His sister fell asleep first, her head resting on his arm. Max stared into the flames, his body trembling, his throat dry. And then, He heard it, a sound that didn't belong. At first, it was just a whisper, a voice speaking in Thai, soft, broken, calling from somewhere behind the trees. He thought it might be refugees. He called out, once, twice, but no one answered. Then came the light, orange, flickering, moving between the trees. Figures in robes stepped into the clearing. Monks, their faces calm but tired. They asked where he had come from. He told them everything in broken Thai, the words falling apart in his mouth, the soldiers, the screaming, the running, the loss. The monks exchanged glances. One of them, an older man with a shaved head and hollow eyes, nodded slowly. "You're safe now," he said, "but we must not stay here." They gathered their things and began to walk. The night was thick. Every sound felt heavier, closer, and somewhere above them, the trees began to move, though there was no wind. The air changed. The jungle had gone still. Too still, and in that silence, Max heard it again. A woman's voice, laughing. At first, Max thought it was just the wind. The sound came and went, twisting between branches, soft like a sigh. But the monks had stopped walking. They stood in a loose circle on the path, their torches trembling in their hands. No one spoke. Even the jungle seemed to be listening. The laughter came again, clearer this time. A woman's voice, high and thin, echoing from nowhere and everywhere all at once. It wasn't a human kind of laughter. It was too sharp, too long, like something that had forgotten how to be human. One of the monks whispered a prayer. Another dropped to his knees and pressed his forehead to the ground. Max clutched his sister's hand tighter, feeling her pulse hammering through her skin. The older monk, the one who had spoken to him before, turned and said quietly, "Do not answer. Do not speak her name. Her name." Max didn't know who she was, but the way he said it made the air colder. The monks began chanting as they walked. The rhythm was slow and deep, their voices weaving through the trees like smoke. The sound filled the air, thick and trembling. Max tried to keep up, his bare feet sliding in the mud. Every step felt wrong, too heavy, too loud. Then something moved beside them. A shadow glided across the trees, quick as lightning, but silent. The torches flickered. The chanting grew louder, more desperate. Max turned to look, and for a heartbeat, he saw her. A woman, or something that only wore the shape of one. Her body floated a few inches above the ground, her limbs long and bent like broken branches. Her hair dragged behind her, a tangle of black threads that brushed the earth. Her face was pale as bone and her mouth was too wide, a jagged smile stretching almost to her ears. She was watching him. The moment their eyes met, the chanting stopped. Every torch went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. Max couldn't breathe. The silence was so deep it hurt his ears. Then, from somewhere behind him came a whisper. His name. Max. He froze. The voice was female, familiar. It sounded like his mother. Max. Come back. His throat tightened. He wanted to answer, to call out. But before he could move, the old monk's hand clamped down on his shoulder. "Don't look," the monk hissed. "Don't turn around." But the voice grew closer, louder. "Max, you left me." Tears burned his eyes. His sister whimpered softly, pressing her face against his side. The monk's grip tightened. And then the forest moved. Every tree began to shake at once. The ground shuddered. The air filled with the smell of wet earth and something else. Sweet, rotten, like flowers growing from a grave. The chanting started again, faster this time, urgent and cracking with fear. Max squeezed his eyes shut, whispering the words he could remember. The laughter returned, but now it was angry, sharp, shrieking, echoing through his bones. Something brushed against his back. Cold fingers, long and bony, sliding across his skin. He gasped and stumbled forward. The monks surrounded him, shielding him with their bodies, their voices rising to a fever pitch. And then, through the roar of the chanting, one of them shouted, "Run!" The old monk pushed him hard, shoving him down the path. Max grabbed his sister's hand and ran. He didn't think, didn't breathe, didn't dare look back. The jungle was alive now, trees snapping, branches clawing, shadows twisting. He could feel her behind him. He didn't hear footsteps, just the whisper of her movement, like fabric dragging through the air. The light of the moon flickered through the canopy, flashing like the blade of a knife. Every time it appeared, he saw glimpses of her, floating just behind them, her mouth open in a grin that was too wide, too cruel. The monks' voices faded into the distance, swallowed by the jungle. All that was left was the sound of their running, the pounding of their hearts, the ragged breath of a boy who had lost everything. He tripped over a root and fell, scraping his knees against the dirt. His sister cried out, but he yanked her up, dragging her forward. "Don't stop," he begged. "Please don't stop." Something screamed behind them. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was both. A sound of fury and hunger and grief all tangled together. Max didn't look. He just ran until the trees began to thin until he saw something. A faint glow through the branches. Light. For a moment he thought it was another trick. But then he heard voices, human voices, calling in Thai, shouting for them to hurry. He pushed forward with everything he had left. His body was shaking, his legs numb. His sister stumbled, and he pulled her up again. And then, suddenly, the trees ended. He burst out of the forest into open land. The ground beneath him changed, from wet earth to dry dust. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. Behind him, the jungle roared one last time. A single, terrible scream that faded into the wind. He looked back. There was nothing. No woman. No monks. Only the dark line of the trees standing silent in the moonlight. For the first time in hours, he felt the air move again. Warm. Gentle. Free. He had crossed the border. But even as he caught his breath, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him out. Something unseen, watching from just beyond the trees. He never saw the monks again. Only the sound of their chants lingered in his head, a rhythm that would echo in his dreams for years to come. For a long time, Max could not speak. His body trembled as if the cold itself were alive inside him. His sister sat beside him in the dust, silent except for the tiny sound of her breathing. The sky above them was pale, washed out by dawn, and for the first time since the soldiers came, there were no shadows. They were found by other refugees soon after, people who had fled across the border under cover of night. They gave Max water and wrapped his sister in a blanket. Someone asked him where he came from, but his voice would not work. Every time he tried to answer, he could still hear that laughter somewhere in his head, twisting like smoke. Hours later, as the sun rose, the monks emerged from the tree line. Their robes were torn and stained with mud. Their faces were gray with exhaustion, but they were alive. When Max saw them, he ran to the old monk and fell to his knees. "Was she following us?" he whispered. The monk looked at him for a long time before he spoke. "Yes," he said quietly, "but she cannot cross into this land. Not now." He led Max and his sister to a nearby temple where other survivors had gathered. The place was little more than a ruin, cracked stone walls, a roof half gone. But inside, candles burned in rows, filling the air with the scent of wax and incense. The sound of chanting drifted through the hall, steady and low. The old monk gave them food, water, and a mat to rest on. For a moment, Max thought he could finally sleep, but when he closed his eyes, he saw her face again. The white skin, the black eyes, the mouth that stretched too wide. He opened them quickly, heart pounding. Later, when the monks gathered for prayer, he asked again, "Who was she?" The old monk did not look up. "In these jungles," he said slowly, "there are places where the dead do not rest. During the war, too many died in fear. Their souls could not find peace. They wander, angry and lost. Some become what you saw." He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She was once a woman, a mother maybe, who died screaming for her children. She does not remember who she is anymore. She only remembers the sound of running feet." Max's throat went dry. "She called my name," he said. "Yes," the monk replied. "She calls the names of those who run. She thinks they are hers." For a long moment no one spoke. The candles flickered, and outside, a wind stirred the leaves. The air was heavy with the scent of rain. That night, as the refugees slept, Max sat awake, watching the line of the jungle in the distance. It stood silent, still, unmoving. But somewhere deep inside it, something was breathing. He could feel it, a slow pulse that answered his own. He didn't know if it was real, or if the fear had built its own ghost inside him. But he made a promise that night. He would never go back. Years passed before he told anyone what happened. When the war ended, he left Cambodia, found work, built a life. He laughed again sometimes, but every time he heard laughter that went on too long, or saw trees swaying when there was no wind, he would stop and listen. He said the jungle never really let him go. It was waiting, quiet, patient, for another voice to call. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, when Thea was still a child, she would wake to find her father sitting by the window, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. He never noticed her there. He just stared at something only he could see. When she asked him once what he was looking at, he smiled faintly and said, "Nothing." "Thea, go back to sleep." But his hands were shaking. They say the jungle between Cambodia and Thailand is haunted, not because of the dead, but because of what they remember. The pain of running, the fear of being left behind, the silence after a scream, and if you walk too deep, when the sky turns a strange shade of blue and the air stops moving, you might hear her, laughing, calling, looking for the ones who ran. Years later, Thea would sit across from her father in the kitchen, watching the way his hands trembled when he held a cup of tea. His hair had turned gray, but his eyes still held that distant, haunted look, like he was seeing something far away that never left him. She'd ask him to tell the story again, the one about the jungle, about the monks and the woman who floated among the trees, and every time he'd say the same thing. "It's just a story, Thea. Forget it." But he never could. She remembered one night in particular. The power had gone out, and the house was lit only by candles. The shadows flickered along the walls, and outside, the wind pressed against the windows like a slow breath. Max was sitting in his chair, staring at the flame. He didn't move, didn't blink. "Thea," he said suddenly, his voice quiet but sharp, "if you ever hear laughter in the forest, don't turn around. Just run." She didn't understand then, but now, years later, she does. Because sometimes, when she walks home through the trees near her village, the air grows still, and the sky takes on that same strange, deep blue. The birds stop singing. The wind dies, and for a heartbeat she feels it. That weight, that cold, that presence. Maybe it's just memory, she tells herself. Maybe it's grief, echoing through generations. But then she remembers what her grandmother said, that fear doesn't die, it waits. Her father never returned to Cambodia. He couldn't. He said the jungle had taken something from him, something he would never get back. And though he lived a long life, his nights were never peaceful. He'd wake in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, whispering words in a language Thea didn't understand. Old prayers, perhaps, or the remnants of a chant that once kept him alive. One night, when Thea was older, she found him standing in the backyard, barefoot in the grass, staring up at the trees. It was late and the moon was full. Thea called to him, but he didn't answer. She walked closer, placing a hand on his shoulder, and when he finally turned, she saw that same look in his eyes, that same frozen terror he must have felt as a boy. He pointed toward the woods. "Do you hear it?" he whispered. Thea listened. At first there was nothing. Then, faintly, the sound of laughter, soft, distant, almost like the voice of a woman carried by the wind. The next morning, Max was gone. His footprints led into the forest, but they stopped after a few meters. The search lasted days, but no one ever found him, and that's when Thea realized something terrible. Her father had kept his promise. He had never gone back to Cambodia. But the jungle had come for him instead. The locals say that on quiet nights when the wind is right, you can still hear it. The laughter of a woman echoing through the trees. Some believe it's the spirit of the jungle, claiming what belongs to it. Others say it's the echo of those who never made it across the border. But Thea knows better. She says it's her father's story, replaying again and again, because the jungle never forgets who runs from it. So if you ever find yourself deep in a forest, and the air suddenly turns cold, if the sky shifts into that strange unending blue, and if you hear laughter that doesn't belong to anyone, don't turn around. Don't listen, run.